Hey there, Live Like Your Nail Color gals. Have you ever thought, I should be doing more? What if something bad happens? Or I wonder what they'll think of me? These are thoughts of worry, regret, and comparison, and they set us up for feelings of anxiousness and depression. But what if you could change your thoughts so you could change the way you feel? Today's gal pal, Dr. Sherri Yoder, says you can do just that, and she's here to share how. But first, before we dive into our conversation, have you taken my quiz to determine your nail color persona? It's fun, it's easy, and all you have to do is go to livelikeyournailcolor.com/quiz. You answer a few quick questions, and in your results, discover your specific nail color persona, your built-in strengths, and how to tap into those strengths when shit happens. Again, go to livelikeyournailcolor.com/quiz. Now, let's get talking with Dr. Sherri.
Tired of so much chip happening? Discouraged by so much downer news? Weary from chronic crisis? Don't let the chips keep you down. Welcome to the Live Like Your Nail Color podcast, where the tips of your fingers and toes are ready to inspire you to not give up and to keep creating the business, career, and life you want. In each episode, we flip the chip and let our fun nail color with that crazy fun name cheer us on to remember our strengths, embrace the power of choice, see life as an adventure, and know resilience is only a touch-up or change-up away. Get ready for a good time and a good laugh with your host, Mary Foley.
Welcome back, Live Like Your Nail Color gals. Every woman I know has been told at some point, it's all in your head, which of course makes you furious because it is such a dismissive comment, as if you're making stuff up. But if you remove the dismissiveness, there's some truth buried in those words. Whatever is bothering you, however you're feeling, it is all in your head, and your thoughts impact your heart as well as how you relate to others. So that might be where it starts and maybe not where it ends. But guess what? Still, there's some truth there, and that's some good news. Because if we get more savvy about what's happening between our ears, we can save ourselves from a whole lot of heartache and drama. Even more so, today's gal pal, Dr. Sherri Yoder, believes you have the power to build and protect your mental, emotional, and relational health. And you can do it just one thought at a time. Dr. Sherri has been a clinical psychologist for years, but left that post to serve as founder and executive director of Thriving Thoughts Global, a nonprofit organization that's looking at changing up the whole conversation about mental health so we can all thrive in this demanding, sometimes crazy ass world. Yes, I said it because guess what? I can, and it's my podcast. All right. So those are really my words, by the way, not hers. So I want to get her off the hook and welcome her, Dr. Sherri, to the Live Like Your Nail Color podcast.
Thank you so much, Mary. I am ecstatic, literally. That's not an overestimation to be here. I'm thankful for you sharing the airwaves and giving me an opportunity to really just spread the word about what mental health is and what it's not.
Well, we can all, I mean, I think when we hear mental health, we all can go, all right, let's say I go to the place of like clinical stuff, but and I'm thinking, no. We all obviously have mental health, which is how healthy we are. So I love that you come from that truly that's clinical psychological background, that experience, but you're bringing it to all of us in a way that's helping all of us. And now I want to get to that. But before that, I always ask my guests to take my quiz. What's your nail color persona? So let's start with, what did you find out is your nail color persona, and did it nail you?
100% Naked Nelly, Mary. 100% Naked Nelly. Okay. Maybe like 2 days out of the year, I'll get a wild hair and paint, and then it's usually black, which might be your later question. But no, I am I call myself so low maintenance, so not granola, but definitely down to earth.
Yeah.
And just so low maintenance that my bandwidth, we mentioned earlier, pre-show, you mentioned the word bandwidth, and I have learned my bandwidth. And that is one thing that I just don't have space for in mine.
Well, and I love that it's such a deliberate choice.
Yeah.
Because the idea of a Naked Nelly is that you are not afraid to be your true authentic self.
Yeah.
And you are happy to show it to the world.
Yeah.
And
can I just say that it really surprised me, Mary, that for such a quick, I mean, literally like a 1-minute assessment, how reflective your nail choices are of your personality. It's such a powerful tool. I recommend it to anybody to take your quiz.
Well, thank you. I think so too. I mean, why spend hundreds of dollars on an assessment that's been, clinically and researched and validated when you can just take this quick, what's your nail color persona quiz and get right to the results, right?
Yeah.
By the way, when you're Naked Nelly, some of the other aspects, I want to see if this resonates with you because it seems like what you just said it does, is that you're modest, real, and sensible, and others find you soothing and supportive.
Okay, well, so I can't speak for how others perceive me, Mary. Certainly, that would be my hope, that they feel soothed and supported around me. But I'll defer to others to decide that.
Okay, well, one question. When you were in clinical practice, did you have repeat clients? Did they come back week after week?
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
Right there, you're soothing and supportive because they would have quit. All right. So I'm just saying, all right, I'm a businesswoman too at heart. Like, let's just look at what the behavior shows in terms of that data.
Except for the ones I had to fire.
Well,
I mean,
those you were also soothing and supportive, and you were a lifeline, and they weren't taking your advice, or taking ownership, let's just say, of their life. And you're like, at some point, you're like, ain't nobody got time for this. I got other people to help who are willing to also partner with me to help themselves.
Yes,
all right, there you go. There's some of my philosophy about therapy, which I've had for years particularly when I got divorced. So there you go. All right, so I want to talk about this thing of mental illness, mental health. We hear the term mental illness a lot more than we used to. Since the pandemic party, as I like to call it. Let's go to a party. Let's talk about mental illness. Let's all get some. But you say there's a difference between mental illness and mental health. What do you mean? And why is this difference a big deal?
Yeah, it's a great question, one that we need to have more conversations about. So thank you for making that possible here. We hear mental health a lot. We actually hear that phrase mental health a lot. In fact, after tragedies, right, we often hear news pundits saying, we need more mental health. We need more mental health providers. We need more mental health treatment, right? So I don't think that there's a shortage of people talking about mental health. What I see the problem is, though, is that we're actually talking about mental illness and we're calling it mental health. These are two very different things, right? Just like physical health and physical illness are two very different things. And so here, I'll just offer this to you and your listeners, and it's something that has really opened the eyes of a lot of people who might be, well, what's the big deal, right? This is just semantics. Well, no, it's not, because it's all about messaging, and people make decisions based on the messaging that they hear, right? They make decisions based on the information that they have. Right now, the mental health messaging is predominantly about mental illness. So much so that if you took up your cell phone right now and you searched mental health, what would immediately come up is treatment, diagnoses, illness, getting help, depression, anxiety, signs of depression, signs of anxiety. But if you searched physical health, you would not get diabetes. You would not get local doctors near you. You would not get, here's what's wrong with you. You would get, oh, this is the act of taking care of yourself, sleep, diet, exercise, right? There's actually tenets of physical health. The issue, the concern that I have, and why I left the clinical practice of treating mental illness, so to speak, is because there's not a conversation. There's not mental health literacy, right? We don't even have words to say, what is it?
Yeah.
Right. So that's why it matters, because if we want to pursue mental health, we have to talk about it in terms of what it is, as opposed to what it is not.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about like the words. We don't say to one another, so how's your mental health? It'd be like saying, do you have a problem? Right. I mean,
yes.
Yeah. Something's wrong with you. Right.
Yes.
But to say, hey, how you feeling? Like, how's your physical well-being?
Yeah.
And how's your physical health? Well, we wouldn't have necessarily a problem with that. I mean, obviously, we're talking about a more close relationship,
Yeah.
let's say a friendship or a family member or a loved one. But still, I get what you're saying. And one of the things that struck me as I was thinking about this topic was, and I wanted to ask you, so I think you've just really verified it, is that uh that why don't we call it mental fitness? Like physical, I was thinking about physical health and I was thinking physical fitness. Like physical fitness is all about the positive. It's all about quote health, great, getting healthy. It's all about being strong and being in a great place. So if we talk about, because when I hear mental fitness, that's where I go.
Yeah.
What do I need to be sharper, smarter, or memory, or just in a, what's the headspace that I'm holding?
Yeah.
And I think, then I thought to myself, I don't do deliberate mental fitness.
No, well, most of us
Same
don't.
way.
And
Yeah.
the reason is because we don't have the language for it, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that we're taught. In fact, it's really interesting how I like the term mental fitness. I will say that kind of sanitizes it a little bit because this is your health. And we know that there's an intricate tie-in between our physical health, our mental health, our spiritual health, our relationship health. All of those things are, have this silver thread of health or well-being. Fitness kind of makes it less personal. And I think we really need to get to a space where we're comfortable with being personal, where we're comfortable with our humanity, where we're comfortable saying the term mental health without stigmatizing it to the degree that it has been now. And so, as the way that we're talking about mental health now, and really talking about mental illness under the guise of mental health, is the very thing that stigmatizes mental health. Because then you say it's these people that need help. It's this type of person that needs to go get taken care of, needs to have the resources available. No. If you are human, you have a mental health. If you are human, you are responsible for taking care of that mental health. And if you are human, you've also been gifted with the power of thought, this amazing thing that sets you apart from every other creature to be able to build and protect that mental health, right? And this is not something that you are immune from, nor is it something that you are free of responsibility from protecting and building.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's just so good. All right. So you're clearly passionate about this. And I appreciate passion when people are passionate about something. And I mean, this is so timely. This is so timely. It does, though, beg the question that I kind of is like, okay, so why are you so passionate? You're human too.
Yeah.
You have your own mental health. I know you just, you talked about leaving your clinical practice recently and doing this, focusing 100% on this nonprofit, but was there a moment in your life when you personally had to focus more on your mental health? Because if you didn't, it would go into mental illness.
100%. There's been several occasions. I'll share just one with you, though, that really set the stage for the work that I'm doing now. But it's certainly what made me understand the humanity of this space, right? And very often, just backtrack really quickly, when I was in clinical practice, one of the things that sometimes people just needed to hear was that the thought that they were thinking or the feeling that they were feeling was quote unquote normal. It wasn't abnormal to think that.
Yeah,
right?
That was my experience. Yeah.
It wasn't abnormal to feel that. You mean you, Dr. Sherri? You've felt that way? You've thought that? Uh-huh. I sure have. And all of us have. The problem is that we're not copping to it. We're not admitting it, right? And so we're further pathologizing the normalcy of our human experience. So I'll fast forward, though, after I had left my practice. So it's not been all that recent, actually. I shut down the practice in 2017, gave up my license to practice in 2018. So it's been not quite 5 years since I gave that up. Or I don't say gave it up. I just didn't renew it. I chose not to renew it.
It's a pivot.
Yeah, it was a
pivot.
Yeah, that's a good word. We'll use Ross from Friends. Pivot. But what happened at this point in my life is, as I was doing the work of developing the thriving thoughts concept. So thriving being growing, flourishing, and prospering, which is not rainbows, kittens, Skittles, right? It's work, it's growth, it's pain, it's all of the things. I was doing that work for myself as I was extracting myself from the clinical environment and then trying to figure out what that was going to look like and where I was going to land. Was doing some organizational consulting with Crystal, who introduced us at the time. And that was good, but it wasn't my it. But I was in a relationship at the time. And this relationship was less than optimal. In fact, it was harmful because there were spaces in my thought world, Mary, that were so desperate and so dark and bleak in terms of what my future held and what I wanted my future to be, in this kind of dissonance between the two of what I could see with where I was and where I wanted to be, and how I kept fighting with myself about, I got to try to make this right. Surely this is the one, this is the relationship.
Oh, so many of us have been there.
Yeah.
In a relationship.
And so this kind of angst, this discontent kept growing and growing and growing inside of me. And I knew, Mary, I knew that one, I knew myself well enough to know that I was not going to permit myself to go to a place where this was going to be the end of me, mentally, emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
But I also knew that I had to wait until I got to that point of friction that was so uncomfortable that I had to act and make a decision. And that happened. I was teaching a college class in Warrenton, Virginia, and on the way home, I just knew I had to take action, and I made a phone call and I said, we need to talk when I get home. We talked. 5 days later, I was moved out. The relationship ended, and I, at the time, had nowhere to go. I ended up in the basement of a friend's house. So this was the end of 2019 and into 2020, which we know is what paved the way for many to come face to face with themselves because they had to isolate because of the pandemic, right?
Well, and their relationships.
And so I had kind of been pre-isolating already after my breakup, having left in the late fall of 2019 in this basement with my 2 giant dogs and me and all of my feelings and all of my thoughts and all of the things that were going on. And so I started processing that. And I ended up doing some podcast episodes about it, wrote a book about it called Breakup Breakthroughs, published that mid-pandemic in 2020. And the whole reason I share that story is because God, in his abundant mercy, gave me the opportunity to practice what I preach.
Mm.
And that is, how do you grow, flourish, and prosper? How do you thrive mentally, emotionally, relationally, spiritually, even in the hard, even in the really tough spaces? And that was what my book was about, was asking and answering the hard questions so you can thrive in the trauma of a relationship breakup. Well, that then set the stage. That's when, from that basement, I would start my nonprofit, Thriving Thoughts Global, which hilariously got approved in record time because apparently nobody had anything to do in the federal government at that point, right? So
I love it. Okay, just kind of ironic. Okay, I'm imagining you in this basement with these 2 dogs. It's kind of dark. I always think of dark.
It was dark,
bank, right? Kind of a thing. You know, you're feeling a bit better, obviously, emotionally and mentally, but you're not completely probably like where you want to be. But you get this. And so you're in this moment. Starting a nonprofit with the name Thriving, and you're not thriving completely at that moment, right? As much as you want to be. Thoughts.
Well, I was actually, Mary.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Oh, yeah. That's the difference. That's the definition. Thriving is not like mountaintop experiences running through a field of daisies with a kite. That is not thriving. Thriving is growth, and growth, when done properly, is painful.
Right. Okay, so you are thriving.
Yes.
To the outside world, it may not look like thriving.
There you go.
Okay, because it doesn't have the trappings of thriving at the moment. Thoughts, all right, obviously you're in thoughts, but global. You're in a basement and you're like, I'm going to change the world, right? But
100%.
Think about how many people started something. Like, I particularly think of entrepreneurs in this small little space in their garage. Yeah. Like you happen to do it in this basement, and they think much bigger than their circumstances seem that they're going to be able to do, perhaps to them, but definitely to the outside world, unless they really had your back, right?
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. And they really knew you. And I just love the contrast. I'm just saying that because that's like a flip the chip moment. Oh yeah. Right.
Definitely.
And you have to keep going on that path. It's not like Shazam, it all happens. You keep doing it one day, one moment, one thought at a time.
One moment, one thought at a time. Absolutely. And in fact, it's interesting. Can I just share a little story? That totally relates to the topic and the premise, I should say, the concept of your podcast. So at that point, I was learning a lot of different thought strategies. And one of them was just simply doing the next right thing, right? Because when you're in a space that's where you're particularly emotionally vulnerable and you maybe have a penchant like I do for anxiety or depression, it's really easy to do nothing and to get stuck. And I said, no, Sherri. You're always, it doesn't have to be big, but you're going to do the next right thing. And so I remember one day I was like, okay, I'll do the next right thing, but I don't know what the next right thing is. And I was just like in tears, So I hung my head down between my knees, true story. And I looked at my toes and what did I see? I saw chipped toenail polish. No joke. And I said, the next right thing is to polish my toenails. And that's what I did. And that set the course for the rest of my day to accomplish one more thing, one more thing, one more thing.
Wow. I did not know this story.
And I didn't even think about it until just now.
Yeah. Okay. You see, and all you had to do in that moment was make that choice. I need to touch up or change up right here. Right now on these toes. You know. And I'm just curious, did you remember how you felt after you did your toenails? I mean,
oh my gosh, yeah. I was like, good work, Sherri. That's the work. That's the work, is doing the thing that you don't feel like you want to do, because when you do the thing that you don't feel like you want to do, then you feel like doing it again or doing more things, right? That's where motivation comes from. Motivation isn't going to fall on us. We have to create it through action.
I love it doesn't fall on us. Yeah. I wish sometimes it would, but about the thing with the toenails is, you just reminded me of something too. Because you had painted your nails because they chipped, right? So you had some polish on.
Yep.
How many times have I said to myself, and I've heard other women say, it's been forever since I've taken time to do my nails.
Yeah.
Myself, go to a salon, whatever. That part is all your option. But I forgot how much I enjoyed it. Forgot how it made me feel.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I just heard in what you'd said is that I forgot. This felt really good. I forgot that was the case, but you had to take that action.
Yes.
So going in today, there's a bazillion nail salons now that are open, and they all need walk-ins. I'm telling you, that's a small business. You could go in today and just drop in and say, I just want to get a quick manicure, 45 minutes, something like that. And
not to take business from folks, because I love that those businesses are available, but there is something to be said, Mary, for nurturing yourself in that way.
Yes, absolutely. Do it yourself. That's the one thing I do love about doing, painting your nails or using something like Color Street, which is a nail strip or whatever, is that it's very inexpensive in the big scheme of things. You can buy a bottle of polish and some nail polish remover, because that's usually very helpful, particularly if it's chipped out. But as some cotton balls and some top coat and base coat, and you can get it done. And for under $20, you can continue this for 6 months. I mean, it's not about the money. It's about the effort and about that, which makes me think I want to talk a little bit more about and get into, we've already started really getting into, I love that, which you said, it's like, what's the next step? But you have these 7 pillars of thriving.
Yeah.
Which I saw on your website, thrivingthoughtsglobal.org. You also have these social posts under the hashtag, This is Mental Health. And they're very clever, and they are a little bit,
thank you.
Well, for me, I'm watching them going, that's my behavior. My behavior is to click and to listen. All right. And then the motivation does kind of rain down, just saying. All right. So, and they're entertaining. They're super short. I love that. They're like little mental workouts, right? Like little mental. Think of them. In fact, it's because I saw one of those not too long ago about being pointy And
Yeah.
that your thing was be pointy, don't conform necessary to others. You were thinking about pointy shoes. At least that's what came to my mind. And I love that because it's about being yourself and really
Yeah.
showing up. But of course, Naked Nelly would bring that up,
Of course.
because, that's who she is. And she really gets it. But these 7 pillars of thriving, I don't
Mhm.
think we have time today to do all of them, but I would love for you to pick a few of them. But I want to start for sure with the first one.
Yeah.
Because the first one you have listed is be honest with yourself.
Mhm.
Why is that the first one? And why is it so hard to be honest with ourselves?
So, again, another excellent question. You're so gifted at this, Mary. I'm glad that you're in that seat and I'm not, and I'm in this one. So being honest with ourselves, it's, honestly, I don't believe it's hard. I just don't think it's a language that we have. I don't think it's something that we're accustomed to being aware of, right? Because being honest with yourself has the prerequisite of awareness, which is being intentionally aware of what you're thinking, feeling, and doing, right? Not just, it is the antithesis of going through the motions.
Right.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And this is what kind of society molds us as creatures to go through the motions and to do the trajectory the right way. And this is what you do, and this is how you do it. I mean, even in my work as a clinical psychologist, I got my doctorate because I never wanted to be a therapist. But what did I end up being? A therapist, because this is what you do, right? And so there's a danger for all of us of going through the motions to such an extent that we permit ourselves to be dishonest with ourselves. And I'll give you a very practical example, and how culture plays into this and plays into to kind of facilitates us continuing to do that. Let's say somebody advertises an event on Facebook, and there's 3 options, right? Going, not going, or interested.
Right. Interested is so lame, so mediocre.
So lame. And so it used to be yes, no, maybe.
Yeah, you're right.
So our culture is built on indifference and going through the motions and not having to commit, not having to be present, not having to be intentional with my choices, such that, and here's the fear, like I can say, well, interested, because then what am I doing? And this is going to tie into all the other ones. I'm focusing on somebody I don't control, which is you, because I'm thinking about your perceptions of my response. Well, at least you'll know I'm interested, right? And I'm not outright saying no, because if I said no, then I would have to give a reason as to why I'm saying no. Right. And then I feel uncomfortable about that, which we don't. Right. So all of these are thoughts that are built on lies. They're not true. And so we'll go back to Master Yoda, who kids used to, joke with me about my last name. He was a brilliant man. So I take that in all seriousness. He said, or creature, whatever he was, he said, do or do not. There is no try.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so when we're honest,
like Karate Kid. All right.
Yes.
Same thing. Whoever's seen that, the first version or the second version, doesn't matter. Right.
It doesn't matter. Right. It's about being responsible and committed that you are not a creature of the wind. You are not blown about by whatever comes your way. You actually have agency. You actually have the power to determine your reality by consciously choosing your thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Well, here's what I think. Yes. And here's what I think is so funny. We go, oh, I want to have choice. I can do what I want to do. And then really in reality, most of the time we just follow the path that's before us, that's been laid, because
the path of least resistance.
It's work, Sherri. And then if I make a decision and some up-leveled awareness, I've evaluated options. I've made a decision. I might even created another option. I have to own it. I have to be held account. I mean, there's some aspect of, well, I chose it. So, if it goes wrong, it's on me, or if it doesn't look that good, or if I, I've had many times in my life where I've not picked the path expected.
Yeah.
And the first time I did it, I remember, it was hard. I mean, I was asked, so we got an opportunity now at my graduation from engineering school on the day. Oh, that everyone's happy. I was very proud of this degree. I was also like relieved, but I just came up like, yeah, I'm not going to pursue this as a profession. And my parents were like deer in the headlights. What?
What?
Like, right.
Right. Well, and that's kind of where I'm at now, right? Like she left her clinical psychology practice to build this global nonprofit, and she started it from a basement because she didn't have anywhere to go, and she's living there with her two big dogs. Like, right. So it is taking a path that is very deliberate, very intentioned, without having the security of an outcome. See, that's the other thing. We lie to ourselves and we say that this choice, because it's either commonly accepted or it fits with the trajectory that society has for me or expectations, then there must be a certainty. But there is not a certainty in that either.
Point. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. But to backtrack to what you said, which I think is a really critical point for all of us to understand in this first pillar of being honest with yourself, if that's the only thing you ever focused on, and the thoughts that you think or the choices that you make, you say, is it true? Is it helpful? If that's the only work that you ever did, you will be a drastically different person if you did that every day for the next 30 days. In the next 30 days, you would be a drastically different person. But here's why. Because freedom or liberty is two-sided. It's a freedom of choice and acceptance of responsibility of that choice, right? It's not one without the other. And I love how, are you familiar with Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning?
Oh, yes.
Okay, what does he say in there?
Powerful book. He's in a concentration camp.
Yeah.
In Auschwitz, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And so, all of us who are listening to this have probably not even were living in that time, like we're alive on this earth. And so it's very difficult to imagine that. He puts you in that space, but and suffering happens.
Yeah.
But it is about what is going on between your ears.
Yeah.
And he takes it to a whole nother level. And you get to decide what things mean.
Yeah.
No matter what the for Nazi Germany or what other even people who are in the same situation are telling him or doing, he gets to decide what it all means. And he was one of the few that was able to survive and then write this, this is not only his only book and his work, but okay, that's what he said overall, but you probably have a really good quote from him that's even more poignant.
Well, yeah. So yes, thank you. Excellent paraphrase. And literally the significance of this, because again, I want to go back to, this is not semantics. This is not some like motivational, I love Tony Robbins, but it's not some hoo, rah, rah, let's feel good. No, this is a life is at stake practice.
Yep.
And I affectionately refer to Viktor Frankl as the OG of thriving thoughts, because he really is. But he described in how he observed people and their attitudes and the thoughts that they adopted and the beliefs and expectations that they had was literally the difference between who lived and who died.
Yeah.
They were all exposed to the same conditions, but it was literally the difference. But here's what he said. He said, in the United States, we celebrate the Statue of Liberty, and I believe that should be evened out by a Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast. Liberty, responsibility, right? And that's where being honest with yourself comes into play.
Yeah. Another way of saying that is really getting comfortable with your own skin. I mean, to me, that's a benefit of getting honest with yourself.
Absolutely.
Right. And I guess, I brought up and you brought up some big things in our lives that we got honest and they were critical moments. So we had to, like, in some ways be forced to do that, because when you said about the trajectory and like, oh, there's things are going to be secure if I go in this direction, I looked at engineering and went, oh, I'd have a job and I'd be miserable too. And so, because I was already had enough misery getting through my degree, like this is great. I'm a young adult, 23 years old, and I'm going to put myself on the path of continued misery. Like that doesn't sound very smart, right? And I didn't know what I was to do, but that was a big moment. I think that we could start with little moments. Like you were saying, if we did it every day for 30 days and just, am I being honest in this situation, and I think that's the way you build. It's like a muscle, like fitness. Okay, I'm back to that again. Okay, maybe because I need to get more fitness. But anyway,
It absolutely is a muscle. Your thoughts are muscles. Yeah.
it's like you can take it down to this just one thought at a time
Yes.
and not make it feel like this huge thing and not beat
Yeah.
yourself up
Yeah.
either. Just go today forward. I can be more
Well,
honest with myself.
and I would say one of the most popular and problematic things for people to start being honest with themselves is about time,
Ooh.
right? We all have 168 hours in a week.
Yeah.
But how many times do we go through a day and say, I didn't have time? Time got away from me. Guess what? Time shows up at the same time every day in the same amount. There is no mystery behind time.
It's a leveler, isn't it? Of all
It
of us.
is.
Yeah.
But can we start to be honest about that? And here, that, like you said, the benefit is getting comfortable in your own skin, because what you start to do is go, you know what?
Mhm.
I have time for what I choose to have time for. And right now in my life, at this time, this is my priority. And that is not, and I'm choosing to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there can be when you choose no, because you know that it's the right thing, KNOW. It doesn't mean you don't have some like, I wish I could. It might be
Mhm.
something that you have to like step away from for a while, and you liked the people and
Yes.
you liked the process and you liked what it was about, but yet there's something even more important
Mhm.
in the moment or now in front of you that you have to do. I certainly am living that, and I'm not going down that road to explain why. It's just that it is.
Yeah.
I have this sticky note actually on my monitor. It says, "Life is short. Act accordingly."
Mm. Mhm.
And it's a derivation of a story that I read about Jack Nicholson.
Okay.
Nicholson or Nicholas? Which is the one who's not the golfer? Who's the actor?
Nicholson.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry. So Jack Nicholson apparently walks into a bar. That wouldn't be hard to do. Anyway, he's actually at a restaurant bar, and he's with a group of people, the story goes, and he's walking through the bar to get to the table. He sees somebody he knows. That person, the guy turns to him, and it's like a few seconds, like he doesn't even stop. He just slows down slightly. The guy said, "Hey, how, apparently Jack says, 'Hey, how are you doing?' or 'Good to see you.' And the guy comes back and says, 'Oh, life is awful.' And he starts complaining. And without skipping a beat or, stopping to be maybe sympathetic or anything, Jack Nicholson says, 'We all die, act accordingly.'"
Right. Right.
And I was like, how can I flip that? Okay, life is short. Though
Yes.
and I thought act accordingly. And I thought
Yeah.
that cuts through it, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first pillar. If we stopped
Yeah.
there, it would be great. But I do want to ask about another pillar that really
Yeah.
caught my attention. And that is, give your thought a second thought.
Yeah.
I know what you mean by that, because the first thing that popped into my mind was like, say what? So, anyway.
So the way I actually word that is give every thought a second one, right? Because our first thought is rarely true or helpful. Our first thought is most often reflective of lifelong thought habits that have done more harm to us than they have good, right? And that can be something as very simple as you get stuck in traffic and you're late for a meeting and you go, of course that would happen to me. Now, wait a second. What if I gave that a second thought and stopped there? And here's why that's important. Because if I don't stop and give that a second thought, like, okay, is this really happening to me? Is this really, like, there's 10,000 cars on the road. I'm the only one that, of course, this would happen to, right? Like, until we can step back outside of that and not follow that first thought, if we're following a thought that is faulty or not honest, not true, then we're leading ourselves down a path that leads to things like anxiety and depression. And I know that sounds like a really big leap, but if we're in the practice of not questioning our thoughts in terms of their legitimacy or their helpfulness, right? Because it might be true, but is it helpful?
Yeah, but there's a universal force that has picked me out.
Yeah.
It's made me a victim.
Right.
And I didn't deserve this. And oh my gosh, the rest of my day is going to suck.
Yes. And so then, of course, you're right. right? Because you're taking that
Oh,
thought.
yeah, because then I'm spilling coffee on me as I'm
And then-
driving. Then I'm late to the meeting.
Right.
Then the client or the patient or whoever I'm talking to, is mad at me or it doesn't go well.
Yes.
And
I would say
it's
this
not my
too.
fault, by the way. It's not my fault.
Not my
It all
fault.
started, in the traffic.
Right. Because I did not leave 10 minutes earlier. And I know without a doubt, there's always going to be traffic, right? So what do I need to do?
It. That's exactly right. Don't leave early enough. Okay. Yes.
So, but here it's interesting. So I'm gonna start with this and then end with something else about this. So I do a word of the day. I don't know if you do this. Like I get it
today. Word of the year, but every day I got to come up with the note.
No. I don't choose a word for myself. I get a word sent to my email inbox every day, right? Like a vocabulary word.
Okay.
And today's word, no joke, was oppugn, OPPUGN, which means to call into question the truth or validity of. So how timely is that we're oppugning our thoughts? That's what we need to do is oppugn our thoughts. And here's the thing. I want to go back to that trail. If you're listening to your first thought and your first thought is not necessarily negative, but not helpful to you, right? If it's making you aware of just how tragic and unjust life is, okay, then this isn't helpful to you. It's not going to help you accomplish that which you wanted to do, which was hopefully to have a good day. But for many people, they roll out of bed and they go, another day. I just got to get through today. If that's your first thought, I just got to get through, oppugn that thought. Question the validity of that, because what if alternatively there's opportunity waiting for you? But because you're so focused on this invalid thought of having to get through, you're going to miss out on the opportunities that were there. It doesn't mean that they weren't there. It means you're not going to notice them because you chose to follow this thought, this train of thought, right? So to go back to, you might still spill coffee on yourself. You might still be late to a meeting. You might still get somebody to yell at you. But if you switch that very first thought that you had, well, chip happens, right? If you switch that immediately and you go, okay, you know what? I'm going to crank up my tunes. I'm going to listen to this audiobook I've been wanting to listen to. I'm glad I have this opportunity. Then even the spilling coffee, oh, all right, that adds a little bit of character. Your whole attitude starts to change based on questioning one thought.
Wow.
So it's an exponential benefit to questioning every thought.
Wow. That habit itself. So I'm also hearing whatever's the first thought, good. Get it done. Get it out of your system. In some ways, don't necessarily settle.
Yes.
Don't beat yourself up for having that as the first thought and also don't settle for it. So give your thought, like you said, give every thought a second one.
Yeah. And I thank you for bringing that up because the human, the compassionate part is you're not responsible for the thoughts that come into your mind.
Mm-hmm.
You can't control that. If they just come out of the blue. They just come, right? Mm-hmm. But you're 100% responsible for what you do with them.
Well, if we start to train our mind and our thoughts, right? And we give that second thought and then we choose a different thought, okay? Like a muscle, can we get to a point where the better thought, the more productive, the more helpful thought comes first?
Yes, 100%. But here's an interesting thing about the brain. So thoughts are habits, right? You know how like when you're driving or you're like doing your hair in the morning, you don't think about every movement, right? Like sometimes we like get to a place in the car and we're like, I don't even remember turning onto this road. Right?
Oh yeah. There's some automated processes, right?
Yeah.
I think what the way the brain goes, listen, we've mastered that. I'll just put this on autopilot literally so I can focus consciously on other things.
That's right. So it's this continual process of learning. But here's the deal. What happens is your brain is capable 100% of learning new thought habits. Mm-hmm. Also, this is something critical for us to understand. Your brain never forgets a habit.
Oh.
So
we have to keep pushing it down?
Well,
not giving it energy?
It's not a continual fight, but the idea is not to be alarmed or defeated when that old thought comes back.
Okay.
Oh, there it is again.
Yeah.
Right? Like that There it is.
I've not
again.
made any progress. I can't,
That's what we do,
quickly
right?
went back to
Yeah.
something else that I thought I'd
Mhm.
mastered this and got over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's called grace too. Right?
Yes.
Giving yourself some grace.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay, so there's 5 more pillars.
There are.
We don't have time to cover them all
Yeah.
today, but those 2 are enough for us to already move towards more mental health and be aware of it.
Yeah.
And I call it flipping the chip. And part of that idea of flipping is being aware that I can flip.
Yeah.
Stopping and pausing and going,
100%.
huh, yeah, this does kind of suck, or I don't really like this. There's some chip happening here. All right, how can I not just be rosy and think of it differently, but how can I use this to propel forward? So
Mhm.
thank you for those 2. I highly recommend every gal listening, go to your website, thrivingthoughtsglobal.org.
Yes.
See a tab for 7 pillars. You've got them listed there. We need to have you back and then go through some more of these because on your website, they are listed in a little bit of explanation, but you gave so much more. I just love it, love it, love it.
Well, and we also really quickly, so
Yeah.
2 things. When you go to the website, there's a pop-up. A lot of people don't like pop-ups, but here's the deal. If you put your email in the pop-up, I'll send you a full color infographic of the 7 pillars.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
And I have that downloaded on my phone. I refer to it often, even though I'm the one who wrote them. I refer to it often. So, right.
You're practicing. You're practicing.
And then the other thing is that I send out every Friday a Thriving Thoughts Tip of the Week email. We send out 1 email a week. And it dives into further application of all of these, just like some of the things that we discussed today. So these are options. These are free options for people who want to build and protect their mental health.
I love that. I love it because I do have I wanted to have you briefly share as you're building this nonprofit. You've been working on it for a while, Thriving Thoughts Global. What are some of the projects that you're currently working on that we can at least be aware of? Because I think it's neat. You're like, I want to get out this message about reframing mental health.
Yeah.
How are you doing that?
Yeah. So thank you so much. Yeah. And it's really about redefining what mental health is, unifying us around the truth that we have a mental health, right? And then giving us a language to build and protect it. So we've got several different mini projects that are accessible to anyone. So I have Monday morning mental health moments. These are a 5-minute, literally 5 minutes from 7:30 to 7:35 a.m. Eastern time on Zoom. You can get the link to register on the website. And it's just something to get your head right and focused on a thought that you can practice for the week. So we have that. We have the weekly email with the further detail about these 7 pillars. And then some of our biggest project right now that I'm most excited about and most expectant of is we have a messaging project, a mental health awareness project that is happening via billboards. In the county where I reside, which is Franklin County, Pennsylvania. So that's South Central Pennsylvania. The billboards should be up, I think, this week, if not early next week. We're going to have 8 of them across the county. And this project is going to run for 6 months leading up to May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Oh, nice.
And each billboard has a message on it. So one of them, for example, says comparison is a lie. The world needs you, not a copy of someone else. So that's one of the billboards.
Oh, that's good.
It says hashtag this is mental health. Like, I want people to understand this is mental health, right? It's not some insidious thing looming outside of you, waiting to land on you and grab you, right? Like this is something you can take your hands, get dirty with, and get in there and build and protect for yourself. So I'm excited to be able to offer a language to people to start understanding that they have a mental health and here's how they can access it to build it.
That. And I love that you put the hashtag, right? Yeah. This is mental health so that they can get more of those.
Yes.
Pithy, poignant, and pointy points from Dr. Sherri. All right. I just came up with that. All right. That's a little too many P's, but that's what happens. Oh my gosh. All right. So as we wrap up, let's talk nail color again. Yeah. If you could create a name for a nail color to inspire us to improve our mental health, our mental fitness, what would that name be?
So this is not like earth-shattering billboard worthy, but it gets to the point. Agency. Like, you have the ability to impact your reality. and understand that you are strong and you have agency and you have the ability to make something happen in the way that you want it to happen by showing up as who you want to be.
Yeah.
Take control of that. Don't leave you up to anyone else.
Don't leave you up to anyone else. Boy, that's good right there as well. That could be a billboard, you know?
Maybe we'll call the nail color that. Don't leave you up to anyone else.
It's kind of long, but we could. I was thinking because I love that it kind of like captures so much, right?
Yeah.
You have it within you. You have the choice. You can do this.
Yes.
What if we just put the word my in front of it? My agency.
Yeah. I love it.
Okay. Well, the cool thing about nail color names is you can make them up to whatever you want. But agency, we're going to go with agency. And it's interesting that word has become more in the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that more,
Oh, good.
language, words have like fashion colors, kind of come into trends. And at first when it was used, I knew what it meant, but the first thing that popped into my mind was like marketing agency, social media agency, right? But it really is about personal determination and will. It's about I have power within me in order to make this kind of choice.
Yes.
So thank you for your time, your agency today that you shared with us. This has been great. For those who would love to connect with you, what's the best way to do that? I mean, I know we have your website, right? thrivingthoughtsglobal.org.
Yeah. Probably social, Mary. I mean, social is the best way to message anybody. You can at Dr.Sherri Speaks on Instagram. You'll have the links in the show notes, I'm sure, or Thriving Thoughts Global on all of the social channels.
Yep. I was just going to say that I'll put all of that in the show notes so people can continue to benefit from you and what you're doing and changing the whole idea of what mental health really is. So I appreciate that. All right. It's been great talking to you today.
You too. Thank you for the platform.
And now for the after party I call Flip the Chip, where I take a few moments to highlight something my gal pal shared that can help us all flip a challenge or a difficulty that's holding us back into something more positive that helps us move forward. What I want to highlight today are 2 of the 7 pillars of thriving that Dr. Sherri shared. The first one is be honest with yourself. Be intentionally aware of what you're doing and feeling. You have agency, the personal power to determine your reality by consciously choosing your feelings and actions instead of unconsciously following the path of least resistance. A big benefit of being honest with yourself is becoming comfortable in your own skin. The second pillar is give every thought a second one. Our first thought about a situation is rarely true or helpful because, as Dr. Sherri said, our first thought most often reflects lifelong habits that have often done us more harm than good. So after your first thought, challenge it. Ask yourself, is this really true? Is this thought faulty? Is it helpful to me? Make your second thought a compassionate, supportive one. Keep doing this, and in time, your first thought will be a more productive one. You can get all of Dr. Sherri's 7 pillars of thought on her website, thrivingthoughtsglobal.org. There's a handy link in the show notes. Of course, as well, you can use your nail color to cheer you on by simply putting on a new color and giving it the name agency, as Dr. Sherri suggested, so that every time you look at your fingers or toes, you're reminded that you have the ability, the agency to impact your reality one thought at a time. That's real mental health. You can make good choices to create the career, business, and life you want, one step, one nail color, one thought at a time. Look forward to being with you next time on the Live Like Your Nail Color podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Live Like Your Nail Color podcast. Ready to live and laugh more? Know a friend who could use some of that too? Then subscribe at liveLikeYourNailColor.com or your favorite podcast app and share this episode right now with the person who popped into your mind. Together, let's flip the chip to be stronger, smarter, and happier.